we're sending in our National Guard, and if we need more than the National Guard, we'll send more than the National Guard, because we're going to have safe cities. We're not going to have people killed in our cities. And whether people like that or not, that's what we're doing. And you've been watching what our missiles do to boats and ships and submarines. How about the submarine? They said, no, that was just fishing. The radical left Democrats said, well, it was a submarine, but they were just fishing. Submarines don't go fishing, do they? You know more about submarines than I do.
Wait. So you're going to defer to them on the submarines, but not on the magnets? We're all very confused. By the way, did they blow up a submarine? I literally have not heard anything about the military blowing up a submarine. I know this morning they blew up 3 more ships that might or might not have had drugs on them or terrorists. And that even if they did, you can't just blow up ships outside of the waters of other countries. But look, the threat really fundamentally isn't about the bombing the ships. That's not a threat. They do that constantly. It's almost routine at this point. Donald Trump gets to choose who lives and who dies. The law be damned, and there's no one who is going to check him on that. So that's basically done. Once you go to the water, we got no control over anything. No, the bigger issue is here in the United States, where if we can bring up this map, you'll see where he has already sent the National Guard. And I will remind everyone, we are less than a quarter of the way through the Trump presidency, and he has already blanketed the map with needless and unprovoked, and I would argue deeply unconstitutional deployments of the National Guard against the will of their states, the people of their states, the state legislatures, and their governors as well. It's everywhere from here in LA up to Portland, over to Washington, D.C. And he says that we need to do that because we're not gonna let anyone die. Well, we will see about that when, I don't know, like the overall US murder statistics come out in a year. I'm gonna make the bold bet that this actually does nothing overall to violent crime rates, particularly because they're going to places that don't really have much of a problem with violent crime, and it's been trending down anyway. In fact, there's your answer, really. What is likely to happen is that murder rates will continue to go down in line with the way they've been going down over the past couple of years. And Donald Trump, as always, is gonna take credit for the thing that was just happening in the background as he was effing us over in the foreground. Now, in that threat, he did not just talk about using the National Guard, he talked about using far more than the National Guard, whatever he wants. And I do want to remind everyone, he has already done that. Here in LA, he sent 4,000 National Guard troops, as well as 700 Marines. And you all remember why they needed to do that, right? There was a protest. Remember, he dispatched almost 1,000 Marines, like a legion of troops, because there were some people protesting outside of a Home Depot. Makes a lot of sense. This entire time in American politics makes so much sense. But he has been talking about doing that in other areas. I know he wants to do that in Portland. Why would they be doing all this propaganda about how violent it is? Those damn Antifa frogs in the streets. It's because they want a rationale, some sort of argument that would provide the rationale to send in these troops. And theoretically, in some of these areas, they might even be able to do it because they've been getting some wins in courts. They got a win last week for Portland. A federal appeals court said that Trump could deploy troops across Oregon for now. Now, I believe that part of that was actually dialed back because they had lied to the judge and said that it would be too inconvenient to have to redeploy the troops that had already been sent there. And then the judge found out that they had not actually sent the troops yet. They were in fact lying about that. But there have been multiple places around America where the okay has been given for them to just screw over the governors, take control of the forces, deploy them against the American people, with the argument being that that's going to actually lower crime. The thing about that is I've been watching these deployments. I'm sure you've been watching them too. Kind of feels like it's increasing the amount of brutality going against the protesters, going against congressional candidates, priests, all of that, journalists. Anyway, some Republicans, of course, like this because they have to, or else they would not be in the Republican Party anymore. Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana requested federal assistance to activate up to 1,000 members of the Louisiana National Guard to combat high crime rates in New Orleans, where Trump has talked about sending troops, but also Shreveport and Baton Rouge, which let's be fair, he definitely would have done that even if it wasn't Trump. If it was some other president, if it was a Democrat or whatever, this is a thing that Republicans always do. They flood the streets of their cities with the National Guard. He's not just bowing down to Donald Trump's fascist need to deploy troops literally everywhere to normalize that in advance of the midterms or anything. No, this is consistent with his ideology. But it's not just him. Missouri Republican Governor Mike Kehoe authorized about 15 members of his state's National Guard to help ICE with, quote, administrative, clerical, and logistical duties. The move came at the request of the Department of Homeland Security, which the idea that ICE, which is receiving hundreds of billions of dollars of funding, would not have been able to get the job done if 24 members of the Mississippi National Guard hadn't been lent to them is absolutely absurd. This is a thing you do so that you can say, hey, look, I'm a part of this. Here, now, by the way, maybe that in a sort of dark way reflects well on this governor, that he's not actually sending the troops out in the streets, but this allows him to tell Trump, yeah, no, I'm playing ball, I'm a team player or whatever. But again, the fact that they are all bowing down, and meanwhile, the Democratic governors that are reflecting the will of the actual people of their states and these cities that would be invaded, that don't want any part of this, just get ignored, not only by Donald Trump and DHS, but also by the courts, is insane. And at some point, the Supreme Court is obviously going to have to weigh in on this. I am hoping, and I will probably be wrong, that they could weigh in preferably before the midterms, because this is going to be used to try to manipulate the outcome of the midterms. But I worry that they're just gonna wait. They're not gonna have the streets cleared by then. That's my fear, but something needs to be done.